perhaps first, there we go. But perhaps explain just what is a VCSE Alliance lead from your point of view, and then the work that's happening in each of the boroughs. It's a place to start.
Yeah, of course. And hi everyone. My name is Sarah. I'm the director of the Southwest London VCSE Alliance. So I just wanted to share with you a apologies presentation I've got, and you will see some of the slides are maybe quite heavy, full of information, but don't worry, I'm not gonna read them out aloud. Let me know if you can see this as a slideshow. Can you see this? No?
Yeah, you've started screen share. We can now. Yeah.
You can now, yeah? So, okay. So I noticed some people are not from Southwest London, so don't worry, because this applies to you guys as well. Because there are VCSE alliances in each area, if you want, of England. So what happened was that the NHS, a couple of years ago, decided that they wanted the voluntary sector to be involved in the governance structures of the integrated care system. Now, the integrated care system basically brings together NHS organizations, all, for example, the mental health trust, the hospitals, and whatever other provision they've got in the community settings, with local authorities and other partners, basically, so that they can take a collective responsibility for planning health services and reduce inequalities. So NHS England clearly stated, for the first time ever, actually, that they had to involve the voluntary sector in the governance. And a way for them to guarantee that was to give some funding to the different areas. I call them areas, they're called systems by the integrated care system, by the NHS, to do exactly this, to involve the voluntary sector. So most areas, and there is going to be one, I'm pretty sure in your area as well, decided to create what we called VCSE alliances. So kind of projects to make sure that the local voluntary sector is represented within the NHS, that they take them into consideration with planning services, that they guarantee they have a voice, basically, as a real partner. So that's the aim of it. In Southwest London, these are the 6 boroughs we cover. And so we've got Croydon, Sutton, Kingston, Merton, Richmond, and Wandsworth. And they're all super different, if you want. Croydon is pretty big. It's got a lot of deprivation, particularly in the north, but also some parts of the south. Then you've got Wandsworth, which is more of an inner London borough. They've got younger population, and there is Richmond, which is slightly, smaller, but has an aging population, for example, compared to more than other boroughs. So they're all very different. And actually, the voluntary sector you will see in each of your systems, as we call them, is super diverse. In Southwest London, we've got about 5,565 organizations. And I know in other systems, they have sometimes even more. So in London, you will have an alliance in Southwest London for the voluntary sector. In Southeast London, that includes Lambeth, Lewisham, all those boroughs. Then you've got Northeast London, Northwest London, I think, and you've got Central, correct me if I'm wrong, Stephanie. And so obviously, the voluntary sector, we're super diverse. We've got a range of groups and working with health and, under the umbrella health or social care. So what we're trying to say to the NHS is, social care and health is not only about the medical aspect of residents, but it's about the wider determinants of health. So yes, we do have voluntary sector groups that give mental health support, and that provide, support for people living with longer term conditions. But we have those groups also working more preventative around the wider determinants of health, helping people with their housing, because obviously that will affect their mental health, helping people, with the family arrangements, with the food banks also, kind of go under the umbrella of wider determinants of health. So we're trying to shift the interest of the NHS to prevention and to deliver in the community setting, basically. Yeah, that's what we do, basically. This is what we try to do as an alliance, is championing the sector, basically, and share insight and information both ways, from the NHS to the voluntary sector, from the voluntary sector to the NHS as well. So how do we do it? So your alliance, wherever you're based, will have someone like me probably attending, either paid or unpaid, attending the big meetings. And there are two main ones. One is about NHS budgets. All they talk about is NHS budgets, and it's called the Integrated Care Board. And one is about the wider partnership. So they bring in people from the local authorities, all the, head of public health in each borough, or one representative for all the boroughs. And it's called Integrated Care Partnership. In Southwest London, we decided to focus on mental health and workforce development. So there is myself attending these big meetings, but we also have a leadership group, and I'll show you who the people on the leadership group are later. And they are the experts, if you want, from the voluntary sector, trying to represent and champion the sector. So this is for us, for Southwest London. So we've got 12 people on the leadership group. You will see we've got the CVS, basically CEO from every borough. And then we've got one person per borough that comes with an expertise that is mentioned in the NHS strategy locally. So, for example, I noticed there was someone from Age UK on the call. So the CEO for Age UK Croydon comes in the leadership group with all the people hat on, and is Croydon hat on as well. In Tooting and Mitcham, we've got the CEO of the football club, and they obviously have an interest in children and young people and expertise, and they cover also the Merton area. And so the idea is all these people are linking up with all the networks you probably attend in one form or another in your borough that are run by the CVSs. So the idea is the CVSs can bring in all the information they hear from in their forums, in their own forums, and so that I can then bring it into the Southwest London NHS, if you want. We also elected some reps. So you will see maybe some names, the strategy for the Southwest London NHS mentioned quite, some areas of work they wanted to prioritize. And I bet they're going to be exactly the same, or if not very similar, in your own system. Obviously, you've got health inequalities and prevention. You have mental health. You always have children, young people, and you always or mostly have older people and frail people. So these are the ones for Southwest London, the areas of interest. And these are the people we nominated to attend these meetings, just to make sure that the voice of the sector is there whenever they talk about services. And as I said, we did a lot of work, obviously, in the last 18 months since I started, and this is just an example of it, but I'm not going to cover the whole thing. I just wanted to mention one for workforce development, for example. What we're trying to do, and this is something that might be of interest to you, is trying to make sure that voluntary sector groups understand how they can utilize apprenticeships more, because one of the things I didn't know about, when I thought about apprenticeship, for example, I thought about, hiring a young person, and provide them with some training as well on the side. But actually, there is a lot of money that we can drive from NHS through the unspent levy as a donation and utilize for existing members of staff. So I could ask for a donation from the NHS as a voluntary sector group, as Croydon Voluntary Action, and pay for, with that donation, for a range of courses for my staff members, existing staff members, so not new people. And so actually I could pay for the master degree, I could pay for a degree as well, or I could pay for a more kind of shorter term courses on all kind of subjects. And some of them worth, £7,000-12,000. So it's a real opportunity, especially because, as you know, there is no budgets for training in the sector at this moment in time, to be honest, as everyone is struggling with funding. So this is something we are trying to put together for the sector, and we will have several workshops in different boroughs. So the next one, for example, is in Croydon, and next Monday, and anyone can come, really, whether you're from Croydon or not. Feel free to come and find out, because it's an opportunity for everyone. Or maybe pass it on to your HR lead. But I think it's a real opportunity that we need to encourage. Mental health. So this is another area that we work on, and we did a lot of work on this. Quite heavy, this slide, I appreciate. I think what I would say is that I think the main achievement probably is, first of all, we managed to have 2 representatives on this South West London Mental Health Partnership Delivery Group. So we've got 2 people from Richmond Borough Mind and a social interest group, which is a specialised mental health, high-level mental health group in Croydon, attending their sessions and really championing the sector. But also, and in this way, they made a commitment to the sector, which includes important stuff like longer term funding, more effective communication between commissioners, things that really help your organisation to deliver those services, properly. And we are also trying to make sure they will be involved in the South West London Mental Health Providers Collaborative, which at the moment includes, for us, for example, only St George's Mental Health Trust and SLAM, which is another South London mental health trust. We actually want them to include 10 to 12 voluntary sector groups as reps as well, because a lot of the mental health provision happens in the community through commissioned arrangements, and we need to be around the table. So this is what we do in a nutshell. And there is a lot of digital stuff going on, trying to remind them what digital inclusion means to the sector and to the community as well. And so these are examples of the work we've done around digital. We tried to comment on the data strategy for the NHS for South West London. You might know Superhighways. I think everyone knows Kate from Superhighways. She's our rep on the digital board. So she will always bring up the sector, and she actually managed to capitalize on some opportunities for small pots of money for the sector as well. And then another big, obviously, piece of work is funding. So we always try to champion the voluntary sector when it comes to funding, and shifting funds to the voluntary sector to more preventative interventions, with some successes and not so many successes as well. As you know, it's quite tricky working with the NHS on this, but we managed to create, for example, a small grants program, which is now going to run for 2 years. And it's tiny £500 grants. It's called the NHS Winter Engagement Fund and NHS Spring Engagement Fund. Tiny grants, £500 only, for people to have conversations about health within the normal delivery. And I think it's worked pretty well so far. And it kind of allows the NHS to get insights from grassroots organizations, because you can imagine that it's really difficult for tiny groups, mostly run by volunteers, or with few employees, to work with the NHS. It's a massive machine. It takes ages to pay invoices. It's sometimes not worth the time to apply for funding, because the monitoring is hideous, and communication can be challenging. So what we're trying to do is to be the middleman, so that we deal with all that, and the tiny groups get the time to do the delivery, basically. So this is a slide for you guys, just local directories, and I know you obviously know of them if you work in any of these boroughs, but in Croydon, for example, the main directory of services for voluntary sector provision is Simply Connect. So you can click on it, and then you can search by activity. And Croydon Voluntary Action also creates some brochures if you want. So one is specifically around mental health. There is one specifically around autism services in Croydon. There is one for homeless. You've got Merton Connected. In Richmond, it's a bit more complex. There are a couple of directories here and there. And then the other ones are, so the Kingston and Wandsworth one, for example, are done in collaboration with the councils. So they've got a different look, if you want. And to the right, you've got your local CVS. So your local CVS, and I'm sure you are in contact with them already, is your infrastructure organization for voluntary sector groups. So they tend to help charities with anything to do with policies, procedures. They run networks so groups can come together. They help with fundraising. Not all of them, I have to say. It depends on the funding they have available. Some of them have fundraisers. Kingston, for example, have got a brand new fundraiser, guys, which is really good news and quite unusual. So do make the most of him if you are from Kingston. And they send out information. So all of these people will send out newsletters with funding, with updates on projects. And so please contact them and make sure you are on their mailing list, because it's super useful to know what's happening in your borough. And that's it from me. I'm sorry for the long talk. Do let me know if you've got any questions. And I was actually interested to know if there is anyone from South West London today, and from what borough you're in and what you deliver.
No, excuse me. So no one delivers any activity in just going to go back up to the top. Croydon, Merton, Kingston, Richmond, Sutton, or Wandsworth. It's on the
hi. Hello, you. I didn't see you.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Sarah. Yeah, so Sarah and I know each other quite well. We've worked together, particularly on voluntary sector. So, hi, everyone. My name is Amrinder Segal. I work for South West London ICB. I cover mainly Merton and Wandsworth. My roles within Merton and Wandsworth are mostly around voluntary sector development. And I'm also responsible for the delivery and maintenance of the local social prescribing programs. So I obviously received the email, and I saw Sarah was speaking, and was very keen to join, see if I could share any of my experiences and intelligence around what we've done as a local sector to kind of support each other, grow, and also the ongoing work around social prescribing.
Great, thank you. Well, you will see, I would advise anyone, in the chat, in the meeting, to link up with their local alliance, VCSC alliance, because what we do is try to bring all the challenges you come across, all the trends you come across when you work as a social prescribers to the NHS. So, for example, you've seen we've got South West London mental health rep. What they try to do is to represent the sector at these meetings. And if you'd let them know what the challenges are that your residents are facing when it comes to mental health, if there is any trend that you can see in the community, they will bring it there, they will add it to the discussion, and they will make sure that their voices are heard. So it's definitely a way to influence if you want. So I would advise you, and a lot of them also have newsletters as well, and they mail out information. So do that, please. For example, actually, one of the things we're going to discuss, that I wanted to discuss at the next leadership group meeting, is social prescribing, because our health equity, they call it, partnership group, for the next 6 months has listed social prescribing as one of the areas they want to review, to discuss. So what I wanted to ask you guys today is whether you've got any insight on how social prescribing is working within your borough. What are the challenges in your area of work? Are you hosted by a voluntary sector organisation? Are you hosted by a GP and paid by a GP? What are the pros and cons? This is something that, I'm really interested about.
Is that just generally, Sarah?
Yeah, generally. And then
anyone who's not necessarily part of Southwest, you can kind of fit in what's happening in other places.
Also because it's useful to compare as well.
I'm just aware there's also a couple of questions. So after people have had a chance to answer that one, then we can go to the questions. I don't want people to feel like we've forgotten to look at the questions.
Sorry.
So any thoughts? I know, yeah.
I've had a lot of trouble getting engagement from South West London, from the VCS sector. There is. Thank you, Laura. So who have you contacted in South West London? Is it have you tried with the CVSs or?
Yes, thank you. So I have made, I think I'm getting a bit of feedback. I don't know if anyone else can hear that.
Let me mute myself. Maybe it's me.
Okay. So I have made contact with the VCSE organizations at various times, with the local councils, the local NHS. I did have really good discussions with Merchant Council, and I actually helped choose, when they were awarding funding to green social prescribing projects, I did help to choose those projects. My issue has been more reaching out to the voluntary sector, in particular to nature and community organizations. I've reached out to, really, as and when I find out about organizations, I will get in touch to introduce them myself and invite them to join the Happier Outdoors Network, which I've put a link to in the chat. But what I've found is some organizations will join the network, but then their engagement with activities and kind of with correspondence is not high. For example, I held appreciative inquiry sessions late last year for all 5 of the ICS regions of London. And most of them had decent attendance, anywhere from like 7 to, I think the biggest was about 15 people. And then on the day, Stephanie was actually at the Southwest session. Only 3 people turned up, and that included Stephanie, who doesn't really focus on that area. So as a result, as a result of that, I have kind of dropped the idea of running any kind of regional project that would focus on Southwest London specifically. So I'm focusing more, I've got a big project going on in Northwest London. There's something in Northeast London as well. But at the end of the day, I can reach out to people, but if they don't want to engage, then I can't force them to do so.
I think Southwest London is slightly different from maybe other areas, because we've got in prevalence our voluntary sector group groups are really tiny. So they're mainly small to medium. And for medium, I mean maximum like 12 employees. So we're talking about very, very tiny organizations, as you know, particularly in your field, mainly run by volunteers. I would say that probably the best way to get in contact with people is through the CVSs rather than individual organizations. For example, in Croydon, we helped the local, I think it's called the Croydon Green Network, to have a web page on our site, and it's only made up of 4 voluntary sector organizations, all extremely tiny, like you probably know them, Croydon Climate Action and, Extension Rebellion, and then you've got Thornton Heath, Sustainable Thornton Heath, rather. And so, and smaller organizations that are more about, parks and nature. But I think you would probably have to come through the CVS, who will direct you to the best person who is, most likely to respond and interact and maybe take the time, because they know and trust us to engage, if it makes sense. And the other thing, I guess, what we could do as well is maybe linking up with the people responsible within the NHS for their green plan. So they've got this green plan, and it seems to me that mostly, to be honest, is about the buildings and how, environmentally friendly they are, and obviously about making sure that their medical equipment and, is more environmentally friendly, their footprint and whatever else. So they've got a massive green plan. They've got a lot of deliverables. Not always possible to kind of find a way to collaborate, but it might be, that you could have a discussion with them as well.
Or is that the role that you would take on and work with Laura to do?
I could connect her with
the CVS Croydon one, aren't you?
Yeah. So, for example, with the CVSs, I could help you with Croydon because I'm employed by Croydon. So I cover in my project all the all the boroughs I mentioned, but Croydon is the one I know the most, and I know the guy that runs the Croydon Green Network, so I could definitely put you in touch with him and try to ask the other CVSs to do the same for the boroughs, and then I could try to understand who is the best person within the NHS maybe to have a chat with regards to the green plan. So that's something I can do if it helps.
Yeah, so the green plan probably wouldn't be so much in my area. I have a colleague who works with the NHS kind of in that sort of subject matter. So I focus specifically on supporting the providers of green and blue social prescribing activities.
Okay.
So I mean, yeah, if you are able to tell them basically that I'm here and that I'm able to support them, and particularly to tell them about the London Happier Outdoors Network and that they are welcome to join that and take part.
Why don't you drop me an email, Laura? Drop me an email. I wrote the email in the chat. Drop me an email with a very brief summary of what you can offer to local voluntary sector groups, and we can take it from there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Juliet Sarah has responded to the question around AGK Barnett and her social prescribing standing.
Sorry, I'm trying to read it, and
she's
read it out.
Yeah, she's employed by charity.
Yeah.
AGK Barnett, but funding comes through the PCN, the Primary Care Network. Sorry, that's just
larger than just those working for one PCN.
Yeah,
more specialized. And enables more specialized
management and training while still being linked to the NHS and actually working in and through GP practices.
My question to you then would be, sorry, is it Michelle? The name of
Juliet.
Juliet. Sorry, Julian's struggling with this chat. Would be, how do you link up with the voluntary sector provision? How do you know? How do you get to know the groups you need to refer people to, especially the tiny ones, because I always worried that if a social prescriber is hosted by a GP network or by a GP practice, they might not know the sector as well as if they were hosted by an infrastructure organization, for example. So do they have a directory? Does the local infrastructure organization has a directory that you can access? How can you find out about voluntary sector provision that is not the usual key players, you know?
Juliet, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was turning on my my camera so I can answer. I'm not sure if you can see me or hear me.
Yeah.
Yes,
No,
yes,
we
yeah.
can.
Yeah, I think having the connection, we still have the connection to AGK Barnet, which is obviously really helpful. And I think
Yeah.
what sort of trying to express is there are 5 social prescribers in the PCN I work in, but there are, I think, something like 25 in AGK Barnet, so it's a much broader network, and then there are 2 managers as well. So I think through there we have our own directory. It's been kind of built up over the last 4.5 years of services in Barnet. That pretty much covers all social prescribing in Barnet, really. So it's kind of linked through that various kind of networks, I suppose. And then I guess it's just a sort of standard route of kind of being a social prescriber and going to events and networking and that type of thing. But I do think having that broader base of social prescribers, because it is the charity, not just the PCN, is really helpful. So I have the group of a few people in the PCN, but then I have a sort of 25, 27 people within the charity. And I think that for me, I think that is quite a good balance of having the connection to the sort of charitable sector through AGK Barnet network of social prescribers, and then also having the connection to NHS as well. Yeah, that's kind of my personal experience.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I'm aware that it's interesting that South West are doing a review because North Central are as well. And they've recognised that small organisations just aren't getting in front of the link workers in the way that they want to. And there's a real issue there around that, and accountability about what happens as a result of that. So the people who are doing that, maybe I should put you in contact with them, Sarah, or whoever the people are doing it in South West, so that you can like share learning with each other around finding, because they're realising there is an issue, which is great that they're taking responsibility for it, and trying to be proactive about finding solutions, but they are aware there's a problem there in terms of access for organisations. So that's maybe something you want to be aware of or add into your feedback. Amrinder.
Thanks, Stephanie. Yeah, no, I just want to mention that the importance of having a very comprehensive and local database of services in relation to social prescribing. Sarah, we had a conversation, I think it was just before Christmas, about the value and importance of having a database of services. And I think when you've got a service as broad in function as social prescribing, you could be sending patients, clients anywhere. You could be sending them to a mental health organization. You could be sending them to a local befriending group, but you could also be sending them to someone that supports with housing or debt. I think with a lot of link workers or social prescribers being from out of borough, the value of having a fully functioning database of services cannot be undermined. And I think that's something that boroughs, where possible, should try and address. We're doing a piece of work with that regard in sort of Wandsworth at the moment. But I also understand that, finances are challenging, and deciding kind of what that database looks like and who the provider might be isn't as straightforward as perhaps it might have once been.
Has anyone else got any other comments they want to make about their experience of either working with social prescribing services or trying to get your activity in front of link workers?
Hi.
Ben.
I had my video. Put it back on now.
No one can hear at the moment, Ben.
Hello.
You're very metallic. Try again.
Hello, can you hear?
We can hear, but you're super metallic. Try. Give it a go. Otherwise, we can always ask you to
Is it better now?
No. Sorry.
I haven't got anything else connected, so I'm not sure.
Try, because we can still understand what you're saying. It's just strangely metallic.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm Ben. I'm the director of Pinhole London, which is a community arts organisation based in Enfield. We sometimes deliver workshops in Haringey as well. Yes, we've been trying to reach audiences and participants through social prescribers over the last 2 years, and we have put flyers out to various social prescribers in Enfield. The referrals have been very small, and the communications have been very brief. I guess it was like the first thing that you mentioned at the beginning when you made reference to small organisations. We're exactly one of those small organisations, but we're not commissioned through the NHS. We had our funding through the Postcode Society Trust and Awards for All bids that I wrote. So we had these workshops, each with places free or very low cost, and our intention was to like recruit people, for need of a better word, through social prescribers to come to the workshop. We had good turnout at all of the workshops, but we had limited people that reached the workshop through social prescribers.
Yeah.
Now I know that because we have small feedback forms which ask a few things, and one of those things is, how did you hear about the workshop? There were some people that came through that came to the workshop who had come through the NHS, but they actually didn't come through a link worker or social prescriber. So it was very, very limited. And I've discussed this with actually Stephanie, and also with the team at Enfield. We now have someone called Penny who's set up a creative health forum in Enfield. Actually, there'll be an event in February. And yes, it would have been great to have more people referred through those social prescribers. And yeah.
Can I ask you, Ben, so how do you know, have you got a list of the social prescribers? Do you know where they are based and how they're employed?
Yeah, so actually, I did have a list of about 6, maybe social prescribers in Enfield who I have their direct email, and that was through going to a meetup that they have once a month, where I actually shared my project there.
Yeah.
And they actually I shared, and then I emailed and did several emails out, because they were monthly over the year, updates with the project, just with if there was a new flyer or if there was any extra information, and booking links and phone numbers and stuff. Yes, so I did have direct communication with those people.
I wonder, I mean, obviously I'm not really familiar with Enfield at all, but I guess one of the things we could do is maybe put the question to the local VCSE partnership for Enfield that there is in Enfield, because they might have a better kind of overview of the situation. I mean, what I'm wondering is it because social prescribers in your area are particularly stuck with specific issues at the moment that are overwhelming and take over from other health related? For example, I know in Croydon, housing, as for everyone, is a massive problem, and a lot of the social prescribers are spending quite a lot of time trying to, you know, solve housing issues that are not really there, you know, within their remit, but you know, they're so overwhelmed by that they don't look at anything else? Or is it because, you know, it's trying to understand what's going on that is not allowing them to see past?
something that's of course fully understandable. The challenge was that there was two significant meetings that I attended like this, where two social prescribing leads said, please send us. They were focused on creative arts, and they said, please send us your information. We will, promote it. So it was, and therefore lots of time was spent to send this information out. If of course it was said we're at capacity, we're dealing with the pandemic, and it's just a challenge when you send things and you don't really hear anything back because of the reasons probably that you've just said. And the other, I mean, it would be great, Stephanie could make. Sometimes I struggle with communication based on my dyslexia. I would, Stephanie possibly could just add anything that I've missed about this, but the other challenge was that Enfield Voluntary Action, who there's been lots of changes happening there, but they had a website which was not being used, but it was the website which Stephanie pointed out to list activities. But then when we spoke to EVA, this website was out of use. However, it was still online. So it's like that was the connection between the activities that were going on in the borough, and that was like the linking thing. And in other boroughs, like for example, I can't remember off the top of my head, but like Newham, I've met people for events. It's so clear and transparent what's going on. But there was this real haze over everything in Enfield. And there was talk about this new directory through the EVA. And then the new directory hasn't happened. They've also, like you said, the process is asking for this form and that form and the other form. I don't think it's the case in other boroughs. So could I ask Stephanie?
What?
Does that sound okay, what I've said as a summary? Does it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I mean, there's an issue in that EVA kept on coming up as being showing the Enfield, they were running the social prescribing service and they're not. So we had to make them aware of that. And I don't know whether they've changed anything on that. When you search on Google, which is what we say to most people, there is a map, but it still had them running it. But they weren't able to tell me who else. And it turns out that there's 4 different social prescribing services now in Enfield, whereas there used to only be one. And that's the same, that may be across a lot of your boroughs as well. It's worth checking because we're trying to keep up to date as much as possible about what's happening. But a lot of contracts have gone from the voluntary sector now back in-house, as we'd call it, back into the primary care network. There's all sorts of reasons for that. So that's Ben is part of that North Central review that I'm talking about, that they're aware of, that they're kind of, Ben was first-hand experience of a small organisation not being able to access the link workers whose job it is to make people aware of what's out there. Yeah. So that's how that all came about.
Yeah. No, I understand that.
And that's really clarified lots of that.
I think that's a challenge, Ben. I agree with you in the sense that where there is one organizations, for example, employing all social prescribers, like for us, it's like that in Merton and it's like that in Richmond, then it's easier for groups to understand who to contact because it's the one organization. They have 12 social prescribers, while if they are employed by, each PCN, then you have to join the dots yourself, which can be very frustrating. Obviously, if
that's how we try and help as well as London or the London Social Prescribing Network. We normally know what's going on, and this was helpful for us in some ways. That helped, and we're going to put something out in the newsletter about it. That there's this review going on at the moment. I was just conscious, Ben, that Juliet said, I'm not in Enfield, as Barnet's a neighbouring borough, but if you'd like to speak to Barnet social prescribers, drop her an email. So you two might want to connect, and that's in the chat. And
That's
Tiziana,
absolutely
you had a,
brilliant.
sorry, Tiziana, you had a, your hand up.
Yeah, Tiziana did, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you, there.
Yes. Can you hear me? Just a
Yeah.
quick one,
Yes.
because unfortunately I need to leave you when I'm in the middle of the road, so hopefully it's not going to be too noisy. My experience with the social prescribing in Hackney, Newham and Enfield, I work in Hackney, Newham and Enfield, and Newham and Enfield has been very difficult to understand how the social prescribing works. And Newham has taken quite a long time, and I'm not sure I got it yet. But my experience in Hackney has been that they work in GP surgery. And actually, I was thinking while you were talking, it would be probably a very good idea for them to work within BCS, because one of the things that come out from them is we don't know what's happening in the voluntary organization, and it's been difficult to get and having a chat with them. So I met one of the social prescriber in Hackney because of another member of a coordinator of a project in the BCS that has worked with us and older people. So it's been a bit of a clunky way of meeting a social prescriber, and it would be, in my head at least, it would be much easier for everybody to have a better way to start talking and working together and sharing resources, because capacity is also another issue.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess the other thing to keep in mind is that sometimes the local CVS takes a little bit of a leading role in trying to summarize for people what the social prescribing scenario looks like. Like in Croydon, we try to have a page with all the list of social prescribers. Some of them they're all actually employed by PCNs, mostly at the moment, with a couple of exceptions. But it's a struggle to keep it up to date. We don't get any funding from the council anymore for anything really, and surely for sure we don't get any funding to do that. So your local CVS will be in local CVSs will be in different places in different boroughs depending on what funding they have available, and so they might or might not be in a position to have a new database or have a new website, or or update their information. So I think the best way to do it is probably to have more of a personal relationship with your local CVS to try to understand where they stand and where they can help you. I
think the issue you have in Newham, there is no CVS, so it's compost, I think, but I think that's just changed to something else. Recently, I heard Newham aren't going to renew their contract, so there's a question mark around who that role is going to be taken on. I personally would be saying go to your VCSE Alliance lead at least as a starting point. So earlier on in the chat, hopefully you all saw, I put all the different VCSE Alliance lead names and contact details and the boroughs, including yourself there, Sarah. So everyone can just be aware, because Sarah said there's a VCSE Alliance lead in each integrated care system, which covers one of your boroughs. So that's where I would also start as well.
Yeah, true. Yeah, because they will know exactly where the CVSs stand and, how social prescribing is working overall. So they will have the bigger picture. So that would be useful.
Or it's a good way of you feeding back into the VCSE Alliance lead. There's issues that people are being able to pick up on yet. So they can take that higher and feed that back into the NHS, because as Sarah said, a lot of the social prescribing services now are run by primary care networks. And that is causing, I think, for the voluntary sector, quite a few headaches. Not that it was necessarily perfect within being based in the voluntary sector either. But I agree with Sarah. I don't think they should have gone back into the primary care networks on the whole, but there we are.
Well, it works well in some boroughs. It just depends on the primary care network, doesn't it? And how because that gives you,
they are. Yeah.
Yes, how engaged they are, how they value the social prescribing work. So it can work well. It can work well.
Yeah. Has anyone got any other questions they want to ask Sarah in the last 5 minutes? Or Sarah, have you got any quick questions you might?
I wanted to check if there is anyone who does social prescribing for young people specifically in the room. Or if within your borough there is any young people social prescriber, because that's something kind of newish that has come through. Not newish.
Amrinda, you've got your hand up.
Apologies. I do feel like I'm probably talking too much as a commissioner
fine.
in the room. But so we have, Sarah, you might be aware of this. We have it, we have it both in Merton and in Wandsworth. In Wandsworth, it's commissioned via a PCN. And in Merton, it's jointly commission funded by Merton Council and the ICB.
I happen to know that contract has also changed from what it was before, Sarah, into a different street games. We're running it now; they're not. I can send you information. The only reason why I say that is I know that there is a children, young people's NHS meeting that's happening quite soon, possibly next week, and you might want to either attend that and ask your question or ask them to ask a question. But I know you're only looking for London, and maybe you're only looking for Southwest, but there isn't, but children and young people social prescribing isn't happening in every single borough across London. It's happening in some. So that's how you might capture.
I was interested just because I know we do in Southwest London, and I was thinking, and I think it works well, to be honest. So I was thinking maybe that's something that other areas could try.
Camden and Islington have one from memory, but I don't know if it's still running. This is the thing, this landscape keeps on changing all the time.
Yeah, it does.
So I could find that information for you if that was useful.
Yes, thank you. That would be great.
Just conscious, got 2 minutes to go. Any final questions? Sarah, a lot of people would like you to share those wonderful slides.
Oh, yes, of course.
Are you happy for that to happen?
Yes, I'll just send them to you, yeah? And you can send them out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be great.
And if you've got any questions on them, drop me an email. If you want to come to the workshop on Monday, I don't mind at all. If you are not from the borough, you just come and find out. We can all benefit from it.
Great. Thank you. Cool. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to let you go 2 minutes early. Thanks very much, Sarah, for your coming along and speaking to us and helping us to find out what's going on in your area. And also thanks everyone for engaging and asking such interesting questions. I think we've covered most of the questions, have we? If we haven't, let me know.
I think so, yeah.
But thanks for your attendance, and have a good rest of your day.
Okay. Thank you.